We will entertain some questions from the audience here. I'd encourage our Zoom audience to also enter their questions into the Q&A box, so we can incorporate your questions herein. Any questions with the audience? Yes, please identify yourself and where you're from.
Yeah, my name is Kim. I'm from Denmark. Currently living in the UK. I'm just wondering about the term seducing, because I thought it was a very specific term and interesting choice of words. So I'm asking you.
Right. Did you hear that, Joefe? The question was from a gentleman named Kim from Denmark. And he wants to know more about the use of your term seducers in this context. Why did you choose that? Is there perhaps a source that you're using? Thank you.
Yes, as I said in the first part of my presentation, I used the word seducers of men, which is actually used by Dawson Drake in the report and it is actually found in the Manila consultations, the document. So I don't use actually that word out of for literary purpose only, but this is actually based on the statement used by the officials in the Manila, the Council of Manila, and he even used the word seducers of our men. So I think that refers to those who were considered as recruiters of the deserters from the British forces. I hope I answered your question. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Second question here in front. Go ahead. from the National Historical Commission.
This is just a commentary, additional commentary to use the different presentation. With regards to the Polaris report, one town of was actually Kapas. No? So part of the Marshall McLean presentation in the keynote was that it was a product of Ilocano migration. But we should take note it was a product of the Polaris report, where there was a chismis, a marites. That's the marites is a current term now.
Rumors. Yeah.
There was a chismis that the British would be attacking by way of the Pangasinan area. So the people of Pangasinan, especially from the San Carlos area, migrated to Capas, which created the town of Capas. So the first migrants of Capas were not actually the Pampangas, they were Pangasinanes out of these Palares.
Interesting.
I'm not going to repeat that. I hope you heard it, Zoom audience. Further questions? We are on Filipino time right now, so we're running a bit late, but we'll maybe take questions for another 5 minutes. Yes, in the center.
Kristie mentioned about the Spaniards recruiting immigrants against the British. I'm interested in that detail of your presentation.
The question is about Igorots in the militia, in the rebellions.
So we know that I think the Dominican missionaries are recruiting men to fight against the in this northern Luzon, and they're recruiting men from different towns, and also they're recruiting people from the mountains. I think we know the terms are very general and vague, and so we don't know which exactly region. I think they say Igorot, and sometimes I think the term is Kalinga, which Kalinga. So we don't know exactly where this. Several, maybe 2,000 is at least probably a conservative estimate that people recruited to come down and fight against the rebels. And so we have these records are missionary records, and it's very a few sentences here and there. I assume they would be paid for this. They would have been paid, I think, for this labor, or the missionaries are working with the local principalia, and to then deal with the chiefs of these local towns to bring men to fight. So it's very interesting, and I think even if I haven't talked about the two revolts, like the Silang revolt and the Polaris revolt, but it's much. I think it is a broader geographical spread and affected a lot more people. That were drawn into this war, really. We can chat more in the break if you like.
Great. Next question. Yes.
Thinking about whether you were thinking about, if you're talking about this kind of quote other years too much. We've looked at other British occupations of other, say, Southeast Asian port cities. I'm thinking of Tabia in particular. I'm thinking about, say, certain Stanford Raffles, right? He has a lot to say about the intake of Chinese. Seeing synergies there. Seeing whether or not that was a marked contrast to what is happening in Luzon during this occupation period. This also goes for as well, the subways, how much you're carrying subway deserters, but subway desertion.
So the question is to both speakers, asking for some comparative references to other Southeast Asian British engagements.
Well, I haven't really considered, I haven't compared like to Batavia and like more like later British invasions, but at the time, the British were so confident that when they attacked any Spanish colony, the Indios and like in other places, Black enslaved populations would support them. And they were like convinced of it. A really famous source at the time that made that argument would be Anson's Voyage Around the World. Like he's like, we're for sure the people hate the oppressive Spanish and will come and they'll welcome us as liberators. And they're shocked when they get to Manila and they find people actually like fighting against them. Like they just did not run to their plan. I think Silang, when they do, because Silang does write to the British and they exchange, they're like negotiating, and like he fits the type that they expected. Like they expected Luzon full of Silangs. And that's why maybe they're so willing and ready to negotiate, because it's what they were prepared for. I think for contemporary, they didn't really talk much about the Chinese. I don't know what they understood of like the Chinese in the Philippines before they came. But in terms of comparison, I thought a lot about Cuba, which is another place where the British invaded in 1762. So by the time the British got to Manila, they'd already conquered Havana, but people in Manila didn't know that yet, including the British, probably like who were on the ground. And similarly, they thought, they were like, of course, oppressed Cubans will like welcome us as liberators, and that's not. It's more complicated. But there, they found a lot of resistance from free and enslaved Blacks. And one of the arguments that's been made in a very good book by Elena Schneider is that the British in that part of the world were known for, they're very cruel enslavers of men in the Caribbean, and no one wanted to end up, the Black people feared being enslaved, taken captive and enslaved in Jamaica. And that was one of the reasons compelling men to fight with them. And also the governor very cleverly offered to grant freedom to any enslaved person who fought for the Spanish, and they didn't end up fulfilling that promise most of the time. It was a lie, but that was the promise. So I think maybe the question would be, to what extent did the British take those lessons on board for future occupations? That would be something would be interesting to explore. Like to what extent do those do those kind of failures inform later invasions or not? Because you think about the recent like invasions in our lifetime. So like, of course, they welcome us as liberators, and it's not what happens often.
So Grace, have you any comment on?
In other countries and in the region. My study is very localized, as you've seen, but that's something to consider, especially in the early period, as far as the Spanish Empire is concerned. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. We're going to end the questions there. I'm so sorry. I encourage you to find the speakers during the lunch break if you have any questions. Thank you very much for Joefe Santarita for dialing in from the Philippines. And we'll be back at 1:30. Thank you.